When they lowered my husband's coffin into the ground, I thought my life had ended too. I stood there, gripping the folded flag in my hands, the cold wind brushing against my face. Everyone around me whispered words of comfort, but I couldn't hear them. All I could see was the man I had loved for 35 years, disappearing beneath a blanket of earth. I remember whispering, "Goodbye, Daniel," as my fingers trembled. He'd been everything to me, my partner, my home, my reason for getting up every morning. Cancer had taken him fast, too fast. Just 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. I never even had time to process it. The church bell echoed in the distance. I stood frozen until everyone else started walking away. My daughter, Grace, held my arm gently and said, "Mom, come on. It's time." Her voice cracked, but she tried to stay strong. She was her father's daughter that way, strong on the outside, breaking on the inside. When we got home that evening, the house felt so empty. His jacket still hung on the coat rack. His mug sat on the kitchen counter. I couldn't bring myself to move anything. Every item in that house felt sacred. I poured myself a cup of tea, sat at the table, and just stared into space. That's when my phone buzzed. At first, I ignored it. Probably one of those sympathy messages that had been flooding in all week. But then I glanced at the screen, and my heart stopped. The message said, "I'm still alive. Trust no one." The number was blocked. No name. No picture. Just those words. My hands shook as I stared at the phone. For a second, I thought I was losing my mind. Maybe my grief was making me hallucinate. Maybe this was just my brain trying to play tricks on me. But it felt so real. I read the message again and again until my eyes blurred with tears. I didn't know what to do. My husband was buried that morning. I'd watched it with my own eyes. He was gone. So who could have sent that message? I called Grace into the kitchen and showed her the phone. "Honey, look at this," I said, my voice trembling. She frowned, reading the message. "Mom, this is sick. Someone's playing a cruel joke. You should block that number." But I couldn't. Something in my gut told me not to. I kept staring at those words, the way he used to text me late at night, short, direct sentences. He never liked using emojis or long messages. It was so him. I didn't sleep that night. I kept checking my phone every few minutes, waiting for another message. None came. Just silence. The next morning, I sat by the window, looking at the sunrise. The house was still and quiet, except for the faint ticking of the clock. That's when I noticed something strange. Daniel's phone wasn't in his drawer anymore. I had packed it in a box before the funeral, along with his wallet, watch, and wedding ring. But when I checked, the phone was gone. A chill ran down my spine. I checked every corner of the closet, the drawers, under the bed. Nothing. The box was still there, but his phone wasn't. Grace came in as I stood frozen by the bed. "Mom, what's wrong?" she asked. "His phone, it's missing," I whispered. She blinked, confused. "Mom, maybe you misplaced it." "No," I said softly. "I remember packing it myself." Her face softened. "You need rest, Mom. You've barely slept since the funeral." She meant well, but I could see in her eyes that she didn't believe me. Maybe she thought grief was making me paranoid. And maybe she was right. But deep down, something told me this wasn't just grief. That night, I went through Daniel's study. His files, his notes, his desk drawer, all untouched since he'd passed. He was a financial consultant, quiet and methodical, always keeping things in order. But I found something odd, a locked folder in his filing cabinet labeled "For Margaret." That was my name. My heart started racing. I tried opening it, but it needed a key. I searched every drawer, every shelf, but no key. I sat there in his chair, staring at the folder, thinking about the message again. "I'm still alive. Trust no one." Was he trying to warn me? About what? At midnight, I got another message. This time it said, "Don't tell Grace." My body went cold. The message came from the same blocked number. My fingers trembled as I typed back. "Who is this?" No reply. Just silence. I sat there for hours, the glow of the phone lighting up my face. The words echoed in my head like a haunting whisper. "Don't tell Grace." I didn't know what was real anymore. Was this a cruel prank? Some scam? Or had Daniel somehow faked his death? I looked at our wedding photo on the mantle. He was smiling, his arm around me, his eyes soft. The same eyes I saw in my dreams every night. And in that moment, I made a quiet promise to myself. I was going to find out the truth. The next morning, I woke up with that message still on my mind. My hands were shaking as I made coffee. The cup clinked softly against the saucer. The world outside looked so normal. Birds singing, sunlight spilling into the kitchen. But everything inside me felt wrong. I couldn't stop staring at my phone, waiting for another message that never came. My daughter came downstairs, already dressed for work. She looked tired too. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked gently. I nodded, pretending to smile. "Just didn't sleep much." She hesitated, then said, "I know this is hard, but maybe you should put your phone away for a while. It's not helping." I wanted to tell her about the new message, the one that said "Don't tell Grace." But something inside me stopped. Those words from last night echoed in my mind. Maybe it was foolish, but a part of me still believed it might be Daniel. And if it was, then why didn't he want me to tell our daughter? When Grace left for work, I sat down at Daniel's desk again. The locked folder stared at me like a secret waiting to be told. I ran my fingers over the label. For Margaret. The words looked handwritten, not typed, meaning he must have done it himself. Maybe in his final days. I remembered how quiet he'd been before he died. Sometimes he'd sit by the window for hours, staring out like he was lost somewhere far away. I thought it was the illness, the pain, maybe fear of leaving me behind. But now I wondered if it was something else. I searched every drawer again for the key. Nothing. But then I noticed something small tucked under a stack of old receipts, a photograph. It was a picture of Daniel standing with a man I didn't recognize. The background looked like a warehouse, maybe somewhere industrial. On the back of the photo, Daniel had written just one word: trust. It didn't make sense. I slipped the photo into my sweater pocket, feeling the edges press against my chest. Then I drove to his office downtown. I hadn't been there since he passed. His partner, Tom, ran the place now. Tom was friendly but always distant. The kind of man who smiled without his eyes. When he saw me, he stood up quickly. "Margaret. I didn't expect. I'm so sorry for your loss." I nodded politely. "Thank you, Tom. I just came to pick up some of Daniel's things." He looked nervous, almost like he didn't want me there. "Oh sure. But most of his files were transferred to storage." "Storage?" I repeated. "Why?" He hesitated. "Daniel wanted it that way. He said some things were sensitive." That word hit me, sensitive. Daniel was careful, but he never hid anything from me. "Where's this storage?" I asked. Tom shifted in his chair. "Look, Margaret, maybe you should let it go. He's gone now. You don't need to dig up old business files." I leaned closer. "Did you know anything about a folder labeled for Margaret?" His face went pale. He froze for a second, then forced a quick laugh. "No, can't say I do." He was lying. I could see it in his eyes. I left the office without saying another word. The air outside felt heavy, pressing against my chest. My husband's best friend, or so I thought, was hiding something. On my way home, I stopped by the cemetery. I sat on the bench near Daniel's grave, the cold stone gleaming in the sunlight. I whispered, "If you're still out there, give me something, anything." The wind blew softly through the trees. For a second, I almost laughed at myself. What was I expecting? A sign from the dead? When I got home, I went straight to the attic. Daniel always kept his old things there: travel boxes, photo albums, and documents he said were boring paperwork. I opened one of the old boxes and found a thick envelope sealed with tape. Written on it in his handwriting: "If something happens to me, Margaret, read this." My breath caught. I tore it open with shaking hands. Inside were several pages, all written in his careful script. The first line made my knees go weak. "I might not be dead when you read this." I sat down on the attic floor, my whole body trembling. The letter went on to explain that Daniel had discovered something dangerous at work. Something about money being moved through fake accounts. He had found out that someone close to him was laundering funds using his company name. He wrote that he feared for his life, that someone was watching him, that if he disappeared suddenly, it wouldn't be because of illness. He never said who it was. But one line near the end froze my heart. Don't trust Tom. I gasped. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Tom, his partner, the man I had just seen, was the one he was warning me about. The last line of the letter read, "If you get a message from me, know that I'm trying to reach you safely. Follow the clues." Follow the clues. I looked at the photo again. The warehouse, the man, the word trust. Maybe that was the clue. Maybe Daniel was alive. That night, I didn't sleep again. I sat by the window, staring at the stars, holding the letter close to my chest. The house creaked softly in the dark, and every sound made me jump. Around 3 a.m., my phone lit up again. Go to where we first met. Bring no one. The message came from the same block number. My heart raced. We had met at a small cafe near the lake, the one we used to visit every anniversary. I hadn't been there in years. I typed back, "Daniel?" No answer. I sat frozen, staring at the message until the clock hit 3:30. Then I made a choice I never thought I'd make. I grabbed my coat, my keys, and the letter, and drove into the night. The roads were empty, the city asleep. The cafe was dark when I arrived, but the light from the street lamp glowed faintly against the windows. I parked my car and waited, my hands gripping the steering wheel. Then from the corner of the street, I saw a shadow move. A man tall, wearing a dark coat, walking slowly toward me. My breath caught in my throat. And as he stepped under the light, my heart almost stopped. It was him. It was Daniel. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might faint. The man walking toward me looked older, thinner, but it was him. The same soft eyes, the same way he held his shoulders slightly forward like he always did when he was nervous. "Daniel," I whispered through the car window. He stopped a few feet away, his face half in shadow. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he lifted his hand slowly, as if he was afraid I might disappear if he moved too fast. "Margaret," he said quietly. His voice trembled. "I didn't know if you'd come." I stepped out of the car, still shaking. My legs barely supported me. I wanted to run to him, to hold him, but something about the fear in his eyes stopped me. "What is this?" I asked. How are you alive?" He looked around nervously before answering. "I can't explain everything here. It's not safe." "Not safe?" My voice broke. "You let me bury you, Daniel. You let me think you were dead. You let our daughter cry herself to sleep for weeks. And now you're telling me it's not safe." His face filled with pain. I had no choice. They were watching. Tom wasn't alone. It goes deeper than I thought. I felt the cold night air sting my face. "You need to start making sense," I said. He stepped closer, close enough for me to see the small scar under his left eye, the one he'd gotten years ago fixing the fence. When I found out what Tom was doing, I tried to report it quietly, but someone inside the company tipped them off. The threats started immediately, calls, messages, warnings. Then someone cut the brakes on my car. My stomach turned. Oh my God. They told me that if I didn't stop digging, you and Grace would pay the price. His voice cracked. "So I disappeared. You faked your death?" I whispered. He nodded. "With help. I didn't want to, but I had to make them believe I was gone. It was the only way to protect you." I stared at him in disbelief. Part of me wanted to scream, to hit him for the years of pain he'd caused. But another part, the part that still loved him, couldn't stop trembling with relief. "You could have trusted me," I said quietly. "I did," he said, his eyes wet. "That's why I left you the folder, the letter. I thought you'd find it sooner." I looked down at the pavement, trying to process everything. "So why contact me now?" He hesitated. "Because it's not over. They know you have the folder. I think Tom found out you came to the office." My breath caught. He acted strange, yes. But how could he? "I saw him following you," Daniel interrupted. "He's desperate. There's money hidden somewhere, documents that prove everything. He needs to destroy them before anyone finds out." I felt the world tilt beneath me. "Daniel, what are we supposed to do?" He took my hands in his, cold and shaking. "You need to trust me one last time. Tomorrow night, go to the old storage warehouse by the docks, the one near the bridge. There's a box there with my initials on it. Inside, you'll find what they're after. Bring it to me, and we can finally end this." My voice trembled. You're not coming with me? I can't. If they see us together, they'll know I'm alive. Daniel, this sounds insane. You want me to walk into some dark warehouse alone? He looked down ashamed. I know it's asking too much, but you've always been stronger than you think. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe this nightmare could finally end. I looked into his eyes, tired, scared, but still the same man I once loved. All right, I whispered. Tomorrow night. He nodded slowly. Be careful. Don't tell anyone, not even Grace. And if something feels wrong, leave immediately. Then, before I could say anything else, he turned and walked away into the fog. I stood there, frozen, watching his figure fade into the darkness until he was gone. Driving home, my mind spun in circles. Was I really helping my husband, or walking into a trap? His words replayed over and over. Don't trust Tom. When I reached home, I checked all the doors and windows twice. I sat on the couch with the letter in my lap and thought about everything. The years of grief, the lies, the shock of seeing him alive. I didn't know if I was angry or grateful. Maybe both. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. A black car parked down the street hadn't moved in hours. When I stepped outside to get the mail, I felt eyes on me. I turned quickly, but no one was there. Then in the afternoon the phone rang. I hesitated before answering. Mrs. Hale? A voice said, calm male unfamiliar. Yes. This is Detective Warren, County Police. I'm following up on your husband's case. Would you be available to come by the station today? My blood ran cold. His case. It was closed. Yes, ma'am, he said. But there have been some new developments. I'd prefer to discuss them in person. I didn't know what to say. My instincts screamed at me that something was wrong. Can you tell me what this is about? I asked. He paused. It's about your husband's business partner, Tom. We think he might be involved in something serious. The name hit me like a slap. I'll come, I said quietly. When I arrived at the police station, a uniformed officer led me to a small room. Inside, a tall man in a gray suit waited. He smiled politely. Mrs. Hale, thank you for coming. But something about his smile made my stomach twist. It was too smooth, too calm. He gestured for me to sit. This won't take long, he said. I just need to ask. Have you spoken to anyone regarding your husband recently? I froze. My mouth went dry. No, primelit. Why? He nodded slowly, studying my face. Because we've received some strange reports. Someone claiming to be your husband tried to access a bank account under his name last week. My pulse quickened. That's impossible. That's what we thought, he said, leaning back. But whoever it was, they knew things only Daniel would know. I swallowed hard. Do you know who it was? He smiled again, that same unsettling smile. We're still looking into it. When I left the station, I could barely breathe. If Daniel had really gone to the bank, he was taking a huge risk. And if this man wasn't a real detective, then someone else knew. As I got into my car, I noticed something taped to my windshield, a small folded note. My hands shook as I opened it. It read, "Don't go to the warehouse. It's a trap." My vision blurred. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. And suddenly, I didn't know who to believe anymore. The next evening, the city felt colder than usual. The streets were slick from a light rain, the kind that made everything shimmer under the streetlights. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, the wipers clicking rhythmically. Every few seconds, I checked the mirrors, just to make sure no one was following me. Daniel's words echoed in my mind. Go to the old storage warehouse by the docks. Find the box with my initials. And that note on my windshield, don't go. It's a trap. I didn't know who to believe anymore. But one thing was certain. If I didn't get answers tonight, I'd lose my mind completely. The warehouse stood isolated near the water, its metal siding rusted and the sign above the door half fallen. A single flickering light illuminated the entrance. I parked the car a block away and approached on foot, the sound of the waves slapping against the dock in the distance. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and oil. My footsteps echoed across the empty floor. Rows of old wooden crates stretched into the darkness. I turned on the flashlight from my phone and whispered under my breath, "Box with his initials, box with his initials." I scanned every label, my heart pounding. Then near the back I saw it. A small wooden box half covered by a tarp, with faded black letters carved on top, DH. My throat tightened. I dropped to my knees and pulled the box out. The lid creaked as I opened it. Inside were stacks of old papers, bank statements, and a few flash drives. I picked up one of the envelopes and froze. It had Tom's name on it, along with several others from Daniel's company. There were signatures, payments, coded transactions. This was evidence. Proof of corruption. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the front of the warehouse. I turned off the flashlight, my heart racing. The sound of shoes crunching on gravel echoed closer. A male voice called out, calm and familiar. Margaret. It was Tom. I froze behind the crates. He kept walking, the beam of his flashlight slicing through the shadows. I know you're here, he said. Daniel told you to come, didn't he? I stayed silent, clutching the box. He sighed. You shouldn't have gotten involved, Maggie. You were supposed to move on. Live your quiet little life. But you couldn't, could you? I took a shaky breath. What do you want, Tom? He turned sharply toward my voice. I want what's mine. He stepped closer, and in that dim light, I saw something glinting in his hand, a gun. Where is it? He demanded. I swallowed hard. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, he snapped. Daniel thought he was smart, hiding files, pretending to die. But he underestimated me. He smiled cold and bitter. He always did. My voice trembled. You tried to kill him, didn't you? He tilted his head. Try? No, Maggie. I did kill him. For a second, everything stopped. My heart, my breath, everything. He took a step closer, lowering his gun slightly as if savoring the moment. He found out about the offshore accounts, the laundering. I couldn't let him ruin everything. I made sure the brakes failed that night. I even watched the car burn. Tears blurred my vision. Then how? Tom smirked. How did you get that message saying he's still alive? That's the funny part. He paused, his tone mocking. It wasn't from Daniel. My skin went cold. He took another step forward. Someone wanted you here tonight. Someone who needed a distraction while they took the real evidence. My guess. They're already long gone. I felt the floor tilt under me. I looked down at the box. Maybe this wasn't the real target. Maybe it was just bait. Tom raised the gun again. Now give me the box and maybe I'll let you walk away. I stood up slowly, clutching it to my chest. You won't get away with this. He smiled faintly. You think anyone's going to believe you? A grieving widow chasing ghosts. Then a voice echoed from the darkness. She's not alone. Tom spun around. I gasped. Daniel stepped out from behind a stack of crates, a flashlight in one hand and a small recorder in the other. His face was pale but determined. Tom's eyes went wide. You're supposed to be dead. Yeah, Daniel said softly. That's what you wanted everyone to think. Tom's gun hand trembled. How did you survive? Daniel walked closer. You didn't make sure the car exploded soon enough. Someone pulled me out before the fire spread. I've been hiding ever since. Waiting for you to slip. Tom's breathing grew heavier. You can't prove anything. Daniel held up the recorder. You just confessed. Tom's face twisted with rage. He lunged forward, but I reacted before I even thought. I grabbed a metal rod from the ground and swung it hard against his arm. The gun clattered to the floor. Daniel kicked it away, grabbing Tom and shoving him down. Tom struggled, shouting, You'll never win. You don't know who you're dealing with. Then sirens blared outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the warehouse windows. Officers stormed in seconds later, shouting commands. Tom froze, breathing hard, as they pulled him away in handcuffs. I stood there, shaking, barely able to breathe. Daniel turned to me, his face lined with exhaustion and pain. It's over, he whispered. But I shook my head. No, it's not. You let me think you were dead for years, Daniel. You don't just walk back from that. His voice cracked. I know. I wanted to tell you every single day. But I couldn't risk it. Tears welled in my eyes. Do you have any idea what that did to me? To Grace? He nodded slowly. Ido. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right, if you'll let me. I looked at him for a long time. The man I once buried. The man I loved. The man who'd broken me just to protect me. And for the first time in years, I didn't know whether to hold him or walk away. Outside, the rain started again, soft, steady, like a quiet mercy. The rain didn't stop that night. It poured down like it wanted to wash away everything. The lies, the fear, the years of pain. I sat in the back of the police car, the blanket around my shoulders soaked through, staring at Daniel as he gave his statement to the officers. Every drop of rain on the window reminded me of all the nights I cried for him. The funeral. The flowers. The silence of that empty bed. Now he was standing there, alive, while everything I believed for years turned into something I couldn't understand. When the officers finally let us go, Daniel turned to me, his eyes tired but gentle. "Come with me," he said quietly. We drove in silence for a long time. The city lights blurred outside the window, and all I could hear was the soft hum of the tires and the distant thunder. He took me to a small cabin by the lake, one we used to visit years ago, when life was simpler, when we still believed in happy endings. Inside, he lit the old fireplace. The orange glow filled the room with warmth, but I still felt cold inside. I finally broke the silence. "Why didn't you tell me?" He didn't look up. "If I had, Tom would have come after you and Grace. He was watching everything, your phone, the house, your accounts. If I made one mistake, he would have killed you both. You let me bury an empty coffin," I said, my voice trembling. "You let your daughter grow up thinking her father burned to death." His voice cracked. "I know. And I'll never forgive myself for that." I stared into the fire, my heart aching. "Do you have any idea what it's like to wake up every morning and feel like your heart's still in the ground? I used to talk to your grave, Daniel. Every day." He reached out, his hand shaking slightly. "I never stopped loving you, Maggie. That's what kept me alive." I wanted to hate him. I really did. But when I looked into his eyes, the same eyes that once made me feel safe, I saw something deeper than guilt. I saw love, pain, regret, and somehow, I saw the man I fell in love with again. The fire crackled softly between us. He told me everything. How he discovered Tom's corruption, how he recorded every deal, how the brakes on his car were tampered with. The night of the crash, a fisherman nearby pulled him out before the car exploded. Daniel paid him to say nothing, then disappeared to collect evidence and wait for the right moment. He looked up at me and whispered, "I was so close to coming back. But when I saw how broken you were, I thought, maybe I'd already done enough damage." My chest tightened. "You thought staying dead would protect us?" He nodded. "I thought disappearing was the only way you'd be safe." We sat there in silence, the firelight flickering across our faces. Finally, I said, "You could have trusted me, Daniel. We could have fought together." He swallowed hard. "You're right. I should have. I was a coward." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rain on the roof, soft and steady like a heartbeat. Then, without thinking, I reached for his hand. It felt warm and familiar, like coming home to something I'd lost. "I don't know if I can ever forget what you did," I whispered. "But I think, maybe I can forgive you." His eyes filled with tears. "That's more than I deserve." We stayed like that, two broken souls holding on to something fragile but real. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. Weeks passed. Tom's confession had been enough to bring down half his network. The police found millions in offshore accounts and fake companies under his name. Justice finally had a face. Grace came home from her college dorm as soon as she heard everything. When she saw her father standing there, alive, she froze, and then ran straight into his arms, crying harder than I'd ever seen her cry. She kept saying, "You're really here. You're really here." Over and over again, as if saying it enough would make it permanent. Watching them, something in me healed. We spent the next few days trying to be a family again. Cooking breakfast together, sitting by the lake, sharing stories we thought we'd never tell. It wasn't perfect. Some nights, I still woke up from dreams of the funeral. Some days, Daniel would sit quietly, staring out the window, lost in memories of the man he used to be. But there was peace in the silence. A peace I hadn't felt in years. One evening, as the sun set over the lake, Daniel handed me a small envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Something I found while I was gone," he said. It's from Tom's safe. I didn't open it because it had your name on it. I unfolded the letter slowly. Inside was a single piece of paper, written in Tom's handwriting. Margaret, if you're reading this, it means you've learned the truth. I never hated Daniel. I envied him. He had everything I wanted, your love, your loyalty, your peace. I told myself if I couldn't have that, I'd destroy it. I guess in the end, I destroyed myself instead. My eyes burned with tears. He knew, I whispered. He knew it would end like this. Daniel put his arm around me gently. Some people spend their whole lives running from guilt. He just ran out of time. I nodded slowly, staring at the horizon where the last light of day met the water. After a long silence, I said softly, "You know, I used to think love was about never breaking. But now I think it's about learning how to rebuild, even after everything." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then I guess we start rebuilding." He took my hand again, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like holding a ghost. The lake shimmered.